Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. Welcome. My name is John Duisberg, and I am a co-founder here at Cooleaf. I am so excited to have this discussion today because we have some wonderful guest panelists who are going to just share about their real-world lessons learned experience as they're navigating an employee experience strategy inside of their organization. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the industry. We're also going to try to make it practical. You know, what are some of the lessons learned? What are some of the key takeaways? Some of the results, right? And so we want this to be really meaningful and practical for you as an attendee of today's webinar. But very excited about this discussion. So welcome, and we'll jump in, and we're going to get started with introducing our panelists and guests. And I'm going to let each of our guests introduce themselves, starting with you, Jen. So I'll go ahead and pass it to you.
Hi everyone. I'm Jen Franklin. I am the Senior Manager of Culture and Communications for American Auto Shield. American Auto Shield specializes in vehicle service contracts and auto claims administration. We're also expanding over on the home side as well. We have about 750 employees, and we recruit in about 12 states. Majority of our workforce is working in a remote environment, but we do have some employees that work a hybrid schedule and some that do report to an office 5 days a week. Really excited to be here today and look forward to sharing our employee experience initiatives at American Auto Shield with everyone today. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Beggs. I'm the Manager of Employee Experience at Wacom. Wacom is a global company that focuses on pen, tablet, and display technology for creative users, as well as digital ink. So I focus on supporting team members in the Americas region. So that is primarily in the US. We do have people distributed across the country. A large number of people are in the Pacific Northwest in the Portland area where we have an office. And then we do have team members that are in Canada and Latin America as well. So there's a little bit of a global scope to what I do. But certainly the last few years have been very dynamic. So I think there's been a lot of lessons learned for me in my role in employee experience. I'm looking forward to talking with the other panelists and sharing with you all a little bit about that.
Hey y'all, my name is Walt Till. I'm a Director of Employee Experience at Shipt. Shipt is a same-day delivery service wholly owned by Target. We're at about 1,600 team members. We've got folks that are in a remote model. We've got a primarily hybrid model and a few folks on site. Yeah, thrilled to be here. Thanks, Cooleaf, for having us.
Awesome. So Jen, Karen, Walt, thank you so much for carving out time. I know for me, from a leadership perspective, it's always super valuable to hear from other leaders about their actual experience, you know, the good, the bad, everything in between. And so that's our goal for all the audience today, is to share as much as we can in terms of best practices, learning, so that you can be proactive with your employee experience strategy inside of your own organization. So we'll go ahead and just run through a quick agenda. I'm going to take a minute or so just to share a little bit about Cooleaf in case anyone's not familiar. The heart of our discussion is really going to be centered in on what we're seeing in the industry related to employee experience strategy, and then the key lessons learned, the results, the experience from each of our guests within their organization. We will share a free resource after the conclusion of our discussion. And anyone who would like this webinar is going to be worth SHRM credits, so that we'll share that code out with you as well. And then we'll wrap up with some Q&A. And so definitely want to hear from the audience. And if there's some specific questions for any of the panelists or just overall, we will make sure to address those as well. Okay, so Cooleaf. So Cooleaf is an employee experience platform. And what we're seeing in the industry is organizations are doing some good things related to employee engagement, but they're kind of happening in silos. Okay, so maybe there's an employee appreciation recognition initiative. There's a wellness committee over here. And our belief is that all of these engagement initiatives are part of the employee experience. And so we want to bring them together into one strategy, into one platform. That improves employee adoption, utilization, because it's a better experience for them. It also becomes more scalable for the leadership of that organization, more data driven. And so employee recognition, I'm just going to kind of share on this slide. So employee recognition is a fundamental part of the engagement strategy. So sharing those stories around people living out your values, celebrating milestones, work anniversaries, wins, being able to collect feedback. So engagement surveys, most people are familiar with those, but being able to pulse on a recurring schedule and having a strategy around that feedback, having a global rewards program. So employees are earning points they can redeem for gift cards, merchandise, donate to charities, branded team swag. People love it. On this top right, engagement activities. So this is where you may have a DE&I initiative. You may have a wellness initiative, a learning and development, or just fun team building things. Bring those together into one program, one content calendar, and that helps with overall adoption and utilization within your organization. A lot of people are working hybrid or distributed, so creating that sense of community and internal community is super important. And finally, how you incentivize performance, based on goals, KPIs, metrics for your business. That's part of this strategy as well. So this is how it comes together in terms of the overall employee experience strategy and how Cooleaf's platform serves and it enables that for organizations. So always love to, instead of hearing from me share about Cooleaf, which obviously I'm passionate about, but it's always great to hear what the real world experience is. And so Jen, as a customer of Cooleaf for American Auto Shield, if you don't mind, would love just for you to share a little bit about your strategy and about your experience working through the partnership with Cooleaf.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, our partnership has been great. We use Cooleaf for so many things, but I think our strategy in the beginning and still is going on right now is using Cooleaf to really make our core values a fixture of the culture. We really utilize it to guide company actions, behaviors, and have made it really as our cultural cornerstone. I like to say we love seeing our employees put those core values into actionable behaviors, and we love seeing going in there every day and seeing all of the examples of what our employees are doing, especially out in a remote environment where we're not together all the time, so we don't really get to see that. And so just looking at all of the recognition is really awesome when it comes to seeing people living those core values. From there, we're really able to focus on those human experiences. We are celebrating team wins. You see that all the time. Employees are getting in there daily to do recognition. They're doing daily activities, challenges. Those challenges are allowing our employees to learn, develop, share their lives with each other too. We get to see some personal aspects, like people will post pictures of their families and their pets. We love to see the pets. And also really just getting in there and having some fun. We celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, promotions. We also utilize Cooleaf for pulse surveys to get feedback, team building events. We have recently started utilizing it to advertise local events. So employees who are working in that remote environment can get out of the house, maybe go meet up with a coworker that lives across town that they've never met in person before. We run contests. We do a lot of wellness awareness and then a lot of DE&I education. And recently we have added we are utilizing it for an ambassador program. And we're doing employee recognition badges. So, I mean, the options are endless. Really, really great tool to be able to utilize, definitely in a remote environment for sure.
Thank you so much, Jen. I have so much respect for you as a leader and just appreciate, the work that you're doing for your team. Our belief at Cooleaf is that, if you can improve most of the hours that we spend on our day, it's working, right? And so if we can improve that experience for individuals, you're improving the quality of life for people, right? And if you can do that in a way that's going to help that business be successful, you've got a really special win-win there. So we're really excited about that. That case study that Jen referenced is on our website under resources. So that case study is out there if anyone's interested. So I'm going to take 1 minute, share a little bit about what we're seeing in the industry related to the importance of employee experience right now. And then we're going to jump into the questions with our panelists. And really, that'll be the heart of our conversation today. So, so what we're seeing overall is that, and Jen, I think if you don't mind muting that right there.
But I'm still somewhat covered up. If you're afraid to tuck in shirts, maybe try this to sort of baby step into it.
I'm on mute. That's not me.
Okay, no worries. Hey, this is live, right? So this is where we go. This is how we roll. So a little bit about just kind of what we're seeing in the industry right now related to employee experience. So our belief is that every forward-thinking organization will have a formal employee experience strategy as just part of their operations. And the reason for that is being able to attract and retain great people is how you will be successful as a business, period. Okay. And so we're starting to see, I think the fifth or the fastest growing jobs on LinkedIn, employee experience leaders are one of those fastest growing jobs. So this is happening. This is across industries. Our guests today, they represent different industries. And so, looking back over the past couple of years, when people started working remote, now we're doing more hybrid. Now all of a sudden you hire that person, they've never met anybody. Well, what do your values mean to them? What is that culture that makes your organization special mean to that person where they never experienced those things, right? And then as we kind of came out of that pandemic, well, then you had that whole great resignation kind of trend, people leaving their jobs for different reasons. And so what we saw is business leaders going to their HR leaders saying, what are we doing? How are we being proactive? We can't lose these good people. We can't run our business. And so so this became a critical priority, right? And so now what we're seeing is, hey, companies based in New York, San Francisco, they're recruiting your people. And oh, by the way, they pay more. And your people can work just where they work today remotely. So why is it, if I'm going to be able to work just where I am today and get paid more, why am I going to stay at your organization? I have to be aligned to the purpose, the mission, the values, the impact that your organization can make. And if I don't feel that alignment, I'm going somewhere where I do, right? So this is the perspective that we hear from employees. Hey, I want to be appreciated. I want to know that my work has a positive impact in the world, that I'm making a difference. I have growth opportunities. I'm included. And if I don't, I'm going where I do. And so that's what we're seeing in the industry. And that's kind of given birth to this rise of the employee experience leader, to not just have an individual, program. It's what is our employee experience from recruitment to offboarding, and being intentional and strategic about that process. So super excited for our guests to be able to share about what their lessons learned are as they've navigated the strategy inside of their organization. So we can go ahead and do the next slide here. And there's a poll that I forgot to mention this. So you're going to see a poll pop up. We'd love to get your feedback, just so we can, in the audience, just see kind of where everyone is today. This is should be up in your view right now. And as you're completing that quick poll, I'll leave kind of the importance of experience in this way. Two quick stories. One is a CEO shared with me that they were in the hiring process, and typically what they would do is they have these applicants, these resumes, and then they go to the candidate that they're going to hire, and they say, we're choosing you because X, Y, and Z, whatever experience, credentials they have. But this candidate said, I'm choosing you, your organization, because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, and it just clicked with the CEO. The power is on the employee's side. they're choosing, they're selecting where they're going to invest their career path, their future, the impact they believe that they can make, the skills that they have, and they're choosing you. And if they don't see that alignment with your purpose, your values, again, they're going to go somewhere where they do. The second quick story I'll share is with a chief marketing officer interview I recently did, and she shared with her leadership team, it was a healthcare organization. They understood the relationship between, if we take care of our people, they're going to take care of our patients, i.e. customers. And so they all were at a leadership level, had this common understanding that there is a direct linkage between employee experience and customer experience. And that's how they're going to be successful as a business. And that's why we see this as not just the future, it is now. And that's what our guests and panelists are going to be able to share with you today. So, here are our results. Interesting. Okay. So do you have a dedicated employee experience inside of your organization today? Split 50-50. Wow. Okay. So half do, half don't. Interesting. And then, in your opinion, what is the, how important is this? Overwhelmingly very important, somewhat important, and then, a few that are not sure about that yet or not there yet. But always interesting to see, just the direct feedback from the audience today. So awesome. Well, thank you for all participating in that poll. And then we're going to jump into the heart of the discussion with our guest here. So again, thank you, Jen, Karen, and Walt, so much for carving out time and being willing to share about your experience. We're going to kick off with, the first question that I'm going to start with, and we'll start with Jen and then Walt and Karen, and we'll kind of go around. One of the things that we see is that when an organization makes a decision that they are going to commit to an employee experience strategy, and part of that commitment is saying, hey, we're going to have a dedicated role, a leadership role here, that's when we see it take off, right? But how did that decision get made? How did the organization say, hey, we're going to prioritize this, we're going to make this decision? Jen, if we'll start with you, how did that give us maybe a quick story or the background with American Auto Shield, and then Walt, and then Karen, we'll love to hear from you too.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was really, and I know everybody doesn't want to hear about the pandemic anymore, but for us, it was really the pandemic. Really a year into the pandemic, we were remote, and we were realizing that maybe that transition, it wasn't handled that well, and that we lost some people during that transition. It was just new to everybody, right? Nobody really didn't know anything about COVID and really what to do in that remote environment, especially when an organization has never been remote before. And so during that time, our organization was really struggling to find top talent. And they knew that it wasn't just from COVID, that they really needed to focus on that employee experience. And that's where I came in, and I got the opportunity to come in and help with my team and streamline the employee experience. Pretty much.
Awesome. For us at Shipt, it was growth, really. Like we had been acquired by Target. We were seeing monumental growth within our team, and it was like we had all these great things about our culture we wanted to try to preserve. And I think it was just seeing that growth and making an intentional investment and saying, like, there's things about this company we want to make sure we carry forward into like the next phase of our life, right? And so prioritizing that and putting that first.
And really quick on Karen, before we jump to you, so in terms of like number of employees, give us a frame of reference. When you say you were seeing that growth, like how many was it, like 500 at that time, or when did you start to feel, or the organization start to feel that?
Yeah, I think we were around 500. I think 500, 600 folks. I was like number 400, and so I'd been here about a year, and moved to switch over to the role. So yeah, it was that key point when the HR team was starting to grow as well. And so it was really just like, what are all the things that we think are really going to be important in the future? And that was one of them.
Awesome. Karen.
Yeah, so at Wacom, I think the decision really came at a time when we were having a lot of changes within the organization in terms of senior leadership and some structural changes, and wanting to be intentional about what it is like. What's the culture like at Wacom as we move forward? What does that look like? How does that tie to our business initiatives? And just being really intentional and knowing that HR and employee experience is central to kind of building that future for the organization. So that's when the role came about. When I moved into the position, it's been about 5 years. So had some foundation before we transitioned into, pandemic mode that you were talking about, Jen. But I think it really came from that place of knowing that HR has a strong role in driving the culture and driving some of those business initiative changes as well.
Yeah, that's great. And I think one of the common themes I've heard with each of your feedback is there were big changes happening inside the organization. And that could be kind of macro things that are happening. It could be leadership, like you were mentioning, Karen. It could be fueling big growth or M&A. So whenever big changes are happening, it sounds like that is one of the things that has kind of initiated this understanding around the priority importance of employee experience. So great to hear these insights. So okay, and so this next question, Walt, I'll start with you, and then I'll pass it to you, Karen. But so for our audience, so okay, we got the background, we understand, just kind of the why in terms of how your team started with employee experience. So talk to us about how it's going. Talk to us about some of the things that you've learned along the way. How are you measuring just overall success in some of these learnings? And so, Walt, I'll start with
Yeah. I think for me, across my career, even before Shipt, it was realizing that like no two people are the same, and everybody's going to connect with the organization in a different way. And so it was like understanding that like 100% participation in whatever event you're doing this month is not the goal. It's getting every person to find something that they connect with in their own unique way. And so I love the creativity that comes with this role. Like that's my sweet spot. And I'll give a quick plug to Cooleaf here too. Like it empowers us to be so creative. So we can come up with a million different ways to connect with people through the platform. And so I just couldn't double emphasize the fact that like don't ever try to get everybody to do everything. I think that you'll be burnout and you'll be disappointed, but give people a kind of a variety of options, and then they'll find their space and connect.
Yeah, absolutely agree with what Walt was saying. I think that's been a lesson to learn, is not everything's for everyone. It doesn't mean it's a failure if you don't get 100% participation. But I think looking across the board, are people engaging in some way in different programs and activities? Are you finding ways to connect with people and connect them to the organization? I think also with having team members in different work environments, remote, we have hybrid, we have people who are on site every day. How do we make sure that there's a sense of there's something for everyone in terms of the different ways people will engage? So certainly we do a lot of things that are fully remote, anyone can attend. Those are great, but also thinking about the team who is in person with each other every day. How do they want to maybe connect in a in-person way that the other group isn't doing? So thinking about that, or one thing that we've done a bit with ways to connect with people, often over food was a way. I think back when people are in the office, let's go to lunch, let's bring in food. One of the things we've done to kind of equalize that is sometimes we have people in person and we have people who are remote. So utilizing vouchers for food, so you can say, hey, here's a credit where you can buy your lunch for this virtual meeting. It's a way to still kind of connect people with food, whether it's in person or virtual, and just trying to think of ways to spread it across the different environments. If you do want to do something that's somewhat the same for everyone. That's one of the ways that we've thought about, how do we get people in their different work environments to have a sense of connection and fairness.
Yeah, no, that's great. I know it's a challenge, to when you got people spread out, you got some people in the office, how do you make everyone feel that they're part of the initiative? So I love the idea about vouchers. And if people do have questions, please put it in that Q&A section. We're gonna address those questions. So I know that folks are definitely interested in the more examples, the more stories about what you did inside of your organization. People are definitely interested in that. And so okay, so this next question, I'm going to start actually, Karen, with you again, put you back on the spot, and then Jen, I'll pass it to you. But it's and so how do you measure success? What are some of the things that you're tracking? What are you looking for? What is your leadership team looking for? Now that you've been up and running with this employee experience strategy, I think that it's really helpful for the audience to understand, okay, well, what does success look like? How do I articulate that as I'm speaking to this with my leadership team internally? So Karen, I'll start with you and then Jen.
Yeah, I think a big area is retention. Turnover is a tough one. It's not just the cost that happens with that, but it's the loss of knowledge. And I think, with our organization, there's a lot of unique roles. Even if you bring somebody new in, it's going to take 6 months sometimes for them to get up to speed. So we've had really great numbers in terms of that retention, what that looks like, low turnover in the organization, even with all of the things that have happened in the last couple of years, that I think ties back to that, why work here, why stay here if there's all these opportunities, how do you build that connection? So retention's a big one that we look at. And then getting feedback, from surveys to say, how are people feeling about the organization? We have some great results recently. We did a survey tied in with our equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging work. And it looked at, how likely are they to recommend Wacom as a place to work to friends and family? And we had over 80% of people saying yes. So that's a good metric to look at is, do people tell other people they want to work at your organization? And also looking at a sense of belonging. And I think that ties in a lot to the experience in that culture. Is like, do people feel like they belong where they work? Are they part of the organization? And again, we had over 80% of people saying yes to that. So I think those are some metrics that you can look at, things that you can actually quantify in some ways, or in terms of tracking how are things going in terms of your employee experience and engagement.
Yeah, that's great. And before I pass it to you, Jen, so to just feedback on your point, Karen, around that question, would I recommend Wacom to a friend, colleague? So what we're seeing organizations and leaders do is, so many people are familiar with Net Promoter Score for their customer base, but we're seeing that happen internally with, we call it an ENPS, an Employee Net Promoter Score, which is what the question that Karen was mentioning there. And then that typically those are done anonymously, but you can have data across your different teams, departments, locations, and understand where you potentially have gaps, where you're strong, and then that can then influence a strategy moving forward in terms of responding to the actual results. And I know that my experience, the leadership teams eat this up, love the data, and being able to see a historical trend in terms of how that ENPS is tracking over time across the organization can be very, very, very powerful. So hopefully I didn't just steal your thunder there, Jen. But I'll pass it to you. What are some of the ways that you're at American Auto Shield that you look at success when it comes to employee experience, the strategy? Anything that you can share on that would be great.
Yeah, I share all the same thoughts as Karen. So I won't repeat. I'm gonna let her have that thunder. I'll go on a different thunder track. But we have also, outside of retention and survey feedback, we have really seen an impact of connecting employees. And I hate to be on repeat, but really to our core values and what those behaviors look like while being able to connect really and engage our employees through sharing their personal and professional experiences in one platform. And so we're measuring specifically to Cooleaf, we look at adoption in the platform. We're looking at, what are those challenges and activities, like how many people are really participating in them? Is there something that we could do differently to really hit maybe a different demographic in our workforce? We're also, really looking at being able to provide as much information as we can to in one platform. A lot of our workforce is spent looking at processes and they're in systems all the time. We really like to try to reduce time wasters for them. So we try to look for ways that we can get them more involved and engaged by lessening their time, but being able to communicate, celebrate, do activities and challenges all in one platform. We really did see, as Karen mentioned, that a reduction in turnover, but we've also seen an increase in inclusion through our surveys and feedback. We get a lot of ideas. Our employees are our best resource. They're always sharing their ideas and feedback with us, and we try our best to put those small wins into considerable actions. And then we also are measuring our social media. So we've been able to take a lot of things that we get out of Cooleaf and take those experiences and turn them into ways that we can showcase our culture to other maybe people that are interested in looking for a new job. It's always a great way to be able to source new talent to the organization.
Yeah, love that feedback, Jen. Yeah, so a few ideas I picked up on when you shared some great ideas there. Taking an inventory, what are all the different ways you're asking employees to receive communications today, to participate, to log in, right? All of the different things that an employee might be tasked with. Oh, by the way, they're busy doing their job, right? And taking inventory of that and saying, hey, how can we consolidate that? How can we streamline that? And ultimately, that's part of the employee experience, right? And that's part of the value of saying, hey, through this platform strategy, how can we just create a smoother, just an overall, more streamlined approach to the operations for our employees. And I love what you just shared about taking stories and things that highlight the culture within the team, the organization, and then being able to repurpose that for like on social, for recruiting purposes. You can repurpose content, and then you can create the stories, and that reflects your brand or reflects your culture. And I know for me and from what I hear, people want to know and hear from other employees, right? There's nothing better than hearing from other people in terms of what that culture and that brand really means internally. So love that feedback, Jen and Karen. Thank you both. So Walt, I'm gonna throw this next question at you, and so every culture is different, every culture is unique, it has its nuances, has the terminology, those things that make it special, right? So at Shipt, when you're leading this employee experience strategy, are there any kind of unique approaches that you've taken specifically for your culture, that you can share that may kind of spur some ideas for folks in the audience today?
Yeah, you talked about employee surveying, just a minute, employee net promoter score and that sort of thing. Listening strategy is one of the things that falls under the responsibility for probably many employee experience leaders, including myself. And one thing that I'm really proud of at Shipt recently I've seen is our leaders connecting the dots for team members when they take a survey that, hey, like, we heard you, we're doing these things, we're implementing these changes because of what you did. It does two things. One, it gets people to believe in that survey. So like, you've heard of survey fatigue. That's not real. People get tired of giving their opinion and not anything happening. Like, taking the survey is not the problem. It's just that feedback landing on deaf ears. But it also builds trust, right? So they know that, like, when they share their feedback, it's taken seriously, and their leadership team or their manager cares about them and wants to see the experience improve for them. And so, not entirely unique to Shipt, but just really proud of what our organization is doing right now. From our C-suite, like I said, to our managers, people are saying, hey, you said this, and so we're going to implement this. And I just love the trust that builds for us.
Love that. I can't hear, or I can't share enough how much I've heard. The worst thing you can do is survey, ask people for their feedback, and then nothing. So yeah, I totally understand that point, and how powerful that is. And kind of echoing, Jen, your statement around being able to collect feedback and then respond as well. So love that. So okay, so let me take it in a different direction here, which is so the audience might be, there might be folks in the audience today that they're thinking, great, Walt, Jen, and Karen, like, you guys have a dedicated role, there's a budget, you're doing these things, but what if I don't have that yet, right? But we understand the importance. We understand the priority around being intentional with the employee experience, but I don't have the backing. I don't have the budget, right? So I would love to just kind of get feedback. You know, Karen, I'll start with you, and then Walt and Jen. But what are some of the things that maybe, you know, as a leader I can do that don't require a lot of budget? You know, how are things I can have an impact starting now, starting small even, and just any kind of lessons learned or best practices you can share. And I'll start with you, Karen, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to realize not everything takes money to do employee experience. It's not all about big parties and those type of things that do take money. It's a lot of the little things. It's asking yourself, you know, how does it feel to work at our organization? And sometimes there's little things you could impact in your role. Sometimes there's bigger things you could impact. But I think if you have any influence over, you know, practices, policies, how that looks can be huge. For us, when we kind of started to come out of pandemic time, could reopen the office, looking at flexibility was key. I think it played into a lot of our retention rates, is listening to people to realize people, that's what they're demanding. That's what the market was demanding. People don't want to come back in the office 5 days a week in some cases. How can we accommodate that? So we rolled out, you know, policies that looked at flexibility as a core piece of how it is to work at Wacom, and how can we accommodate that. So that's one way in terms of, you know, a change of policy didn't cost anything. It took some time, it took some work, you know, all of that, but it, you know, it impacts how it, you know, how happy people are to work here because they can have that balance. I think looking at, you know, well-being and burnout are a couple of areas that we keep hearing about because, you know, people have been overwhelmed. And so what are ways that you can improve, you know, the demands of your team members to have more balance, you know, and flexibility has been a big one for us on that piece. But also looking at your managers. So do you have internal resources to help support your managers and make them more effective and make them more aware of what's going to improve the experience of your team members? So some of that can just be education. It could be in-house training, those type of things. Again, take time, take effort, but don't necessarily take budget. So I think those are the places to start looking at. And then maybe you show you have some wins there and you make that impact and make the case that there should be a role that, you know, or a budget that's focused on that. But I think there's a lot of ways to have impact without the dollars.
Yeah,
That's great.
I'll jump in there, Karen. Like, I think a lot of us wear a lot of different hats too. Some people are doing this in addition to other things. And so like, get scrappy, like Google is your best friend here. We still use that. We have a team for employee experience. So we still are Googling things and looking for meeting starters and icebreakers and like ways to connect. So definitely get creative and scrappy. And I give a shout out to somebody on my team, Jacob. He listened to your people too. Like, he told me multiple times to use this thing called Gartic Phone. I'll put it in the chat, GARTIC. It is so fun. It is free. And it's like a combination of Pictionary and the telephone game. And we play it all the time now. Like, I make an excuse to play it. And we always end up in like happy tears, just like, it's so fun. So like little things like that are free and easy. And you can take advantage of them.
Love that. Thanks, Walt. Thanks for sharing that. Jen, is there any additional feedback?
Yeah, I mean, definitely driving engagement. It doesn't require financial output. I mean, I know that like our people services and L&D team, they developed a successful career mapping experience that helps people work on their individual development plan to help reach their career goals. So, you know, putting something like that into action. Our learning and development team also provides free classes for like professional development. So that's something free that is gonna, you know, push your employees forward. Our engagement team also has done like virtual team building events. So you talked about Google, awesome resource. You can get some free things on there. Etsy is also a good friend too, cheap things you can get on there for team building. But she does free hosted events and works on building departments, relationships, because, you know, in that remote environment, sometimes you don't connect with other departments because you're just not working with them on projects. So she'll host these free events. And then our ambassador program has been really successful in the way that it's free and it's allowing our employees to get the opportunity to work on their communication skills. And maybe we don't have room for them right now on our engagement team because of budget and cost, but it allows them to get involved allows them to communicate with their teams about what's going on in the organization, what type of events are going on, is there a town hall coming up? And we've also been able to incorporate employees in our town halls that they've never been involved before, they've never presented before, and we work with them to get them prepared to be presenters and share company news and updates with the organization. So those are all free, doesn't cost a thing, and also get your employee engaged in the organization and what's going on.
Yeah, I love the scrappy entrepreneurial, ideas here. And just like you just mentioned, Jen, having individuals share at a all employee meeting or different meetings, that in and of itself, I mean, that hey, I'm taking ownership, I'm putting in a spotlight, I'm getting visibility. Those are things that they may seem small, but they can have an impact in terms of that employee experience. So love those ideas. That's awesome. So one other question related to budget, right? And so over the last few months or so, a lot of negative news. So layoffs, just bank failures, right? Economic uncertainty, all these things, right? And so there's pressure to cut back on budget or remove budget. And so wanted to kind of get your perspective and for this question. So I'll actually start with you, Jen, and pass it to you, Walt. In the face of these things at a macro level, how are you able to make sure that employee experience stays a priority? How are you making sure that internal commitment remains even when some of these kind of external macro things are happening right now? So Jen, I'll start with you, and then Walt.
Yeah, I think I've been really fortunate. I think the top leadership must be really bought into changing the culture for the better too, and really be involved in the employee experience. I think without that alignment at the top, it's really hard to make long-lasting, meaningful change. I'm very fortunate, like I mentioned, that I have that support from my leadership. And I think that we have seen from that we've been able to see our managers and leaders lead with a little bit more empathy in responding to the needs of our employees. I think that's been crucial, and seeing that has allowed employees to increase their innovation, feel more comfortable with sharing ideas, being more comfortable in sharing their feedback, whether it's good or bad. I think we have, and I know I mentioned it before, but seen a decrease in employee turnover. We've definitely seen that. And we've also been able to see that really providing better employee experiences has really been a driver for those better customer experiences. And so I think it's just been really great to see that when employees know they're valued, you see them being more productive and more willing to be able to share, feedback, concerns, what's going well, what's not going well. And again, being able to have that leadership support has really been an impact and a vital component to making engagement be a top priority for us.
Yeah, Jen, I think like similar here, like for our organization, we've seen some turnover, but we also, like John, you mentioned with especially in tech, where you consider ourselves retail tech, like there's been a lot of layoffs, right? And so they're a little hesitant to jump to some new organization. And so when those people are staying, we want to make sure they stay engaged, right? That they're not either the quiet quitting, or there's a lot of terms that are floating around with this idea or concept, but like, how do you make sure? So I think you double down on the culture. I think it's more important now than it's ever been to make sure that these people, are excited to be here and are engaged with what they're doing. And the other thing is just, you may be running lean. So like some organizations have cut back and you're asking people, less people to do more. And so then again, I think it's all the more important to make sure you're checking on those people, thinking about their wellness, their inclusion, all the things that matter to them. So yeah, I would say if now is way more important than maybe it was when things were maybe a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense if you step back, right? It's, hey, if there is this uncertainty out there, if there is a layoff, for those people who are still there, they're feeling that. And so to address that, but also to make sure that those folks they understand, hey, this is the purpose we're on. You are appreciated. I think it, to your point, Walt, it matters that much more. So thank you, Karen, Walt, Jen. Thank you so much again for sharing your insights and your leadership. As we wrap up, our final question, and then we're going to move into Q&A. We want to always make sure we leave the audience with something, a practical piece of advice, a key, takeaway, lesson learned that they, may apply to their team. So as we wrap up today, and Jen, I'll start with you, then Walt, and then Karen, you'll bring us home here. Is there a key takeaway, a key lesson learned that you can share with our audience as we wrap up? So Jen, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I really think key takeaway is that there's really no one size fits all when it comes to the employee experience. No secret ingredient. I guess if we knew it, then everyone would be engaged and they would never leave, right? So I think that employee experience really at all stages of the employee life cycle is maybe not solely the responsibility of just one sole person on engagement, like me as a leader. I think you need leadership support and buy-in. And I think just knowing that employees are different with their own motivators and criteria for what creates really your engaging work environment and a positive employee experience, and that you go through trial and error. And when you do that, just do your best when approaching that trial and error, and maybe start with a foundation, have maybe some different look at your organization based off of survey feedback and see what drives and motivates people at work. We, and I'll wrap up real quick, but we really focus on that task experience, making sure that things are really not complicated to get something done. And we look at that social experience, especially in a remote environment. We want people to feel connected. And then looking at a sense of fulfillment, hey, I'm doing this, you want to make it that it's unique to me, and that maybe over through that trial and error that they'll give you some feedback, and then you can do something different the next time.
Jen, that is so good. Like, my ego gets in the way sometimes where I'm like, oh, I have this brilliant idea, and then it doesn't resonate with everybody. And I'm like, don't keep forcing it. Like, let it go, like try something new. I love that. My thing would be just take care of yourself. If you're on this webinar, like you're interested in employee experience and what a great place we get to work and help people, but you can't do that if you're not taking care of yourself. And a really tactical thing you can do, like take breaks is what I'm always preaching. But I went to a conference the other day, and this presenter, who I should give credit to, I'll figure out who it was, said they go on 10-minute walk, no phone, like no anything. And they pretend they're describing what they see. So your senses, what you can see, what you smell, and what you hear to somebody that's not there. So like, imagine you're talking on the phone to somebody, but you're not. And it keeps you super present. And like, it's very like, just like a mindful activity. And I tried it, and it is incredibly hard too. It's amazing how like you want to pull out your phone and look at that, or like see if you missed a Slack or whatever. But try that, like be present in that moment, take a break, get some sunshine. It can make a huge difference when you're in these like back-to-back meetings.
Yes, great tips, Walt. Definitely practice what you preach. Take steps away from work from your desk for a few minutes can be hugely helpful. An area that I think is like an action item is, reevaluate what you're doing. Look at your activities, your programs. Have they gotten stale? Like, don't feel like you have to do something if it's not getting the results you want or the engagement that you want. I think about our years of service recognition program that we've had over the years, that we had it where it was kind of about HR and the employee, and the manager was missing from that piece. And so we updated that. So it really became more about, it was about the manager having that communication. And then again, we reevaluated it as we got into a more distributed virtual environment to utilize Cooleaf with that, where we can all celebrate it and everyone across the organization. And we see a ton of engagement celebrating those milestone anniversaries with the team. So I think just, evaluate what you're doing, listening to that feedback, and don't be afraid to tweak or update what you're doing to keep it relevant can be very impactful.
Love that. Love that. So again, Karen, Walt, and Jen, thank you so much. We've got a bunch of questions, and we want to dig into them. So we're going to fly through these next couple resources here. We're going to go straight into these questions. I want to give some time for us to do that. But So the resources, one is the Great Retention. So if you enjoyed the discussion, we have a podcast called The Great Retention where we just interview leaders and they share about their experiences. They share about their strategies, right? And so we'll share this with all the attendees. So you have that. Definitely encourage you to check it out, learn from other leaders, see what they're doing, lessons learned, and so forth. So that's one resource that'll go out. The second is the SHRM code. So if you want to get credit for being a part of this webinar today, this code is going to give you eligible for that, for those credits for SHRM. We'll send this out, so don't worry if you miss it right now. We're going to send this out via email, so you have that. Okay, so for the Q&A, I want to go ahead and get this set up here. Okay, so let me see. Okay, so I'm going to start. I've got the questions rolling in here. So the first question is, people experience is so clearly linked to business growth and success, yet there are still some top leaders that seem to resist investing time and resources in people. What do you suggest to overcome that resistance? So, I think conceptually people understand that this is important, but actually committing, budget and time and so forth, for some leaders, that's still a hump to get over. Any feedback in terms of how you're able to break through and get those leaders on board?
I can jump in here. I just have a thought around, like, if you have access to the data and connect the dots for team members about where you're seeing turnover and maybe, I think you're going to pay for it. Like, you pay for an employee experience role, or you can pay to backfill people when they leave. And it's going to cost more and more to go get that new talent. And so if you're in HR and have access to some of that data, that would be where I would start, is see if you can connect the dots by kind of telling that story.
Love that. All right, next question coming in. Okay, so next question. So after the data is collected from, doing the surveys, if you can get employees to, believe in taking action, how do you implement, or how do you implement in an authentic way and get buy-in from senior managers? So I think where this is going is, hey, we've done this survey. You want to make sure that your leadership is going to take action on the survey. Are there things that you've experienced in terms of getting your leaders on board to take action, communicate that with your employees? Any examples or things you can share related to that, relating to collecting feedback and then taking action and making sure senior leaders are on board with that action?
I can take it. I think it's really about, maybe if you're seeing resistance, trying to identify some small wins. So you do the survey and you start to see, maybe there's an issue creeping up or something like that. What can we do that we can put in front of employees to show them that we are listening? We do hear their feedback. We do value what they're saying, and identify that small win. And then look for an opportunity to be able to create maybe some longer down the road plan to really be able to get like buy-in and be able to get, maybe some turnaround in that feedback. And I also think it's really great that if maybe you don't get their buy-in, showing that data, especially if you start to see trends, and you can start to show like, hey, we saw this maybe last poll survey and we're seeing it again, and continue just that conversation. I think the more passionate that you are about it, it might possibly sink in and you can get some action taken.
Yeah, I can piggyback off that, and there's a question directed towards me, so I'll kind of tie it in here. We did all the things Amanda Rogers called out. So we did do breakout groups after the survey to dig a little deeper into some things, because sometimes your survey is going to flag an area that is like problematic or an opportunity, but you don't know, actually you need more info, right? So it can be like a good check engine light, and then you have to dig a little deeper. And then we do have a group called Culture Champions. So it's people that we've gotten from the lines of business. So my role sits in HR, but all of our different functions have someone that represents them on that team. It's in addition to their everyday duties. So we're careful with how much we put on those people. But you can use those folks too, to kind of like help drive the culture from within as you're kind of like pushing from the top, if you will, from HR. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can, I think, just, and then communicate. Like what did you hear in the survey? What are you changing because of the survey? And start it all over again.
Awesome. Okay, so a couple of questions here. So Jennifer, Jen, you mentioned a free resource about Etsy. I guess people want to know, what was that resource? Could you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, if you go on there, like if you're looking for maybe a team building activity, some of the vendors that are out there have free resources available. So you have to look for something specific. So like if you're looking for, I don't know, icebreaker, you're going to have to search through Etsy to see, but a lot of the vendors, especially if you have purchased from them before, will give you items for free or even at discount.
Okay, good to know. So we're going to wrap it up. Final question here. And so, so would love to get, we have a question related to how did you roll out the Cooleaf platform inside of your organization? Was this after a survey? Was this a leadership announcement? Any kind of feedback in terms of how you rolled this out, how that tied into your employee experience strategy?
I can take that one to start.
Yeah.
With us, it was really a response to the change in our work environment to being so much more distributed, that we knew we needed something that was going to help support, that sense of culture at the organization and bring people together. So, when we rolled it out, getting the team leaders, the managers on board and engaged with it was central, because we really wanted them to use it to connect with their teams as well as the wider organization. So we had, some specific, focus on that with manager engagement with the platform. And then, I think we've been using it. It's been about a year that we've been using Cooleaf, and I think that we've just been able to build off the areas where we see people really, engaging with it. And it comes up as a positive through surveys and other feedback that we do, that it's a great way that people feel connected to the culture.
And I'll just plug Cooleaf support. Like, they are amazing. John doesn't pay me to say this, y'all. I mean it. Like, their support, even after the fact, after rollout, but even at rollout too, is just incredible. So we really appreciate Cooleaf and all they do for us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I know on behalf of our team, on behalf of our audience, Karen, Jen, Walt, thank you so much for just being willing to share your insights, your lessons learned. This is so valuable to hear firsthand what you're experiencing, how you're navigating this strategy. For everyone in the audience, we are going to continue to dive in on topics and share knowledge and resources. So please stay connected with us. We're looking forward to just kind of continuing this conversation. So stay connected, stay plugged in. But thank you so much, Karen, Walt, and Jen. We really appreciate your insights and all of the audience for joining us today. So thank you.